Hey guys, Vance here. In the last video, the lost era of Japanese street racing, we followed the mountain passes, the midnight highways, and the anonymous drivers who turned ordinary roads into unofficial racetracks. Toge battles, Wangan runs, sleeper legends, and techniques that still confuse today. But there was always something missing from that story. Because while everyone was focused on the drivers, something else was evolving in the background. Something quieter, more structured, more dangerous in a completely different way. The tuning shops. Small garages scattered across Japan that started out fixing cars and ended up redesigning them from first principles. Not for show, not for marketing, not even for attention, but for speed. Real speed. The kind of speed that makes insurance companies reconsider their life choices. And this is where the underground racing world stopped being just a culture and started becoming an industry. Before we go forward, we go back briefly because nothing in this story makes sense without the lost era. Japan in the late 80s and 90s had booming economy, accessible performance cars, dense urban highways, and mountain roads that looked like they were designed by someone bored in geometry class. Out of that came the underground racing ecosystem. Toge, technical mountain warfare. Wangan, high speed highway insanity. Parking areas, the original social media feeds, but with more cigarette smoke and less moderation. Cars like the Toyota AE86, Nissan Silvia S13, and Mazda RX-7 FD became icons not because they were perfect, but because they were available, and availability is dangerous when combined with enthusiasm. But as the racing scene grew, something else was forming underneath it. The people who didn't want to drive fast, they wanted to build fast. At first, tuning shops in Japan were simple: oil changes, suspension swaps, carburetor tuning, basic survival services for machines that were being slightly overlapped. But then the street scene changed. Drivers started asking for more grip, more power, more stability, more everything. And the tuning shops responded the only way they knew how, by ignoring common sense and continuing anyway. Small garages became experimental labs, not officially, not safely, not legally in most cases, just persistently. Somewhere in Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, and smaller industrial towns, mechanics began solving problems that OEM engineers didn't even have to consider yet. And slowly, a strange thing happened. The underground started outperforming the mainstream in specific areas. Not overall production, not reliability, but edge performance. The kind of performance that only matters when you are already driving too fast for your own judgment. This is where names begin to matter, not as brands, but as philosophies. Tuning shops as secret engineering houses. HKS, boost culture refinement. Spoon Sports, Honda precision obsession. Mines, OEM like refinement of Nissan platforms. RE Amemia, rotary chaos control. Top secret, speed experiments that sometimes look like science fiction. TRD, the bridge between underground knowledge and factory engineering. These weren't just aftermarket parts suppliers, they became research ecosystems. And unlike modern car culture, where modifications are often visual first, Japanese tuning culture was performance first. Sometimes aggressively so. A car didn't need to look fast, it needed to survive being fast. Then came one of Japan's most globally misunderstood contributions to car culture: sleeper culture, the art of lying with horsepower. The philosophy was simple: make the car look completely unremarkable while hiding absolutely unreasonable performance underneath. A quiet sedan at a stoplight might idle normally, look slightly dusty, have steel wheels, and still be capable of upsetting supercars emotionally. The Nissan Skyline GTR R34 became a perfect example of this duality. From the outside, refined, understated performance coupe. From the inside, engineering complexity that requires a manual and possibly emotional support. And this mindset became a tuning philosophy in itself. Because in Japan's underground culture, attention was not the goal, effectiveness was. Sometimes invisibility was part of the strategy, a strange concept in today's world. Tailgate racing remained the proving ground, but as tuning shops advanced, the cars became more specialized for specific roads. The Mao Tailgate legends, Demon Kings of the mountain passes, are not just drivers, they were combinations of skill, road knowledge, and mechanical advantage. Because the better the tuning shops became, the more performance shifted from driver only skill into driver plus machine synergy. Cars were no longer generic, they were tailored instruments for specific terrain. Suspension setups adjusted for elevation changes, downhill braking stability, corner exit traction. Engines tuned for mid range response, turbo spool characteristics, heat resistance over repeated runs. This is where rally influence quietly entered the picture again. Techniques like weight transfer control, trail braking, Scandinavian flick variations, left foot braking migrated into two-gear driving through adaptation, and drifting emerged as a side effect, not as entertainment, but as a control method, a correction tool that became a culture of its own. If Toge was precision, Wangan was inevitability, where engineering met fear. High speed highway runs demanded a different kind of tuning philosophy entirely. Cars like the Toyota Supra A80, Nissan Skyline GTR R32, heavily modified RX-7s, and sedans were pushed into sustained high speed territory. At those speeds, problems multiply quickly. Aerodynamics matter more than power. Stability matters more than acceleration. Cooling becomes existential. And tuning shops responded again by solving problems OEMs had not yet prioritized for extreme aftermarket use. Some of these solutions will later appear in professional motorsport engineering, which is where the story starts to blur. At some point, something unusual happened, the shift toward OEM level thinking. The underground stopped being just reactive, it became influential. Manufacturers started paying attention to aftermarket turbo behavior, suspension feedback trends, chassis tuning philosophies, real world modification data. Companies like Nismo and TRD began bridging factory engineering with enthusiast culture. The feedback loop was now complete. Street to tuning shop to motorsport, motorsport to OEM, OEM back to street. And suddenly, the gap between underground engineering and official engineering started shrinking. Not because the OEMs copied blindly, but because the underground had been solving real world performance problems under extreme conditions for years already. Which is a strange thing to realize that some of the most advanced performance thinking didn't originate in labs, but in garages where someone once said, this should probably not be stable at this speed, but let's try anyway. Eventually, the world caught on. Global export of a culture. Games like Gran Turismo and Need for Speed Underground exported the philosophy globally. Then, Initial D turned Toge culture into mythology. Suddenly, AE86s became icons, Sylvia platforms became tuning legends, drift culture exploded worldwide. But what most people absorbed wasn't just style, it was mindset, the idea that lightweight matters, balance matters, tuning is philosophy, and ordinary cars can be extraordinary, even if you're just delivering tofu at questionable speeds. Looking back at Japan's underground racing era, what was really built? Well, it wasn't just a cultural movement. It was an unintended engineering pipeline. Street racers became tuners, tuners became engineers, engineers influenced OEM development, and OEM philosophy began feeding back into enthusiast culture again, a loop of constant refinement. So when people talk about JDM legends, they're not just talking about cars. They are talking about an entire ecosystem that evolved from midnight racing, small garages, obsessive tuning, and an almost irrational dedication to making machines better. And maybe that's the real legacy of the lost era. Not the racing itself, but what it created underneath it. An engineering culture so deep that even today, somewhere in a quiet workshop in Japan, someone is still looking at a perfectly normal car and thinking, this could be slightly more unreasonable.